Everybody remembers their first wave, whether it be in the ocean, their first break in business, or their first big win. I'm David McClymont, a former competitive surfer now turned C-suite executive leading the Palm Beach Symphony into its 48th season, and your host on the Waves of Success podcast.
This show is brought to you by IYC Yachts, Chervaux, and Square Grouper. Produced by Indie House Films.
Hey everybody, welcome to Waves of Success. I'm David McClymont, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today with a very special guest, Jennifer Parker, who's a nutritional chef. She's going to be sharing with us some really exciting things as to how we create a more healthy diet, which we all know is very challenging. Jennifer, welcome to Waves of Success.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So we had the opportunity about a week ago, I guess, to sort of talk about nutrition.
We did.
And obviously I'm a former competitive surfer, still a triathlete, and try to stay in shape, and it's challenging.
It is challenging, yeah.
I'd love for you to share with our audience over the next 20 or 30 minutes a little bit about how you got to where you are and how people that lead such busy lives can manage a nutritional plan.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. It's about having a plan. A lot of people kind of go through mindless eating and mindless about nutrition, and not necessarily through the fault of their own. We discussed this before about how there's a lot of misleading things out there in food companies that are, trying to fight for your business, and so they're a little bit tricky. So it's very difficult to actually navigate what healthy actually means. And yourself, even as like a professional athlete, how difficult that can be. And sometimes there's a lot of misunderstandings about what you need. And we discussed that, where a lot of people think it's about calories in, calories out, and not necessarily about the quality of the food that you're eating. And you just told me about how when you changed your diet, you actually felt that energy difference, right?
Well, you and I have talked about that. So personally, I have candida. So I have to be very careful about sugars and yeast.
Yes.
And as an athlete trying to train, that becomes very difficult because one of the things that you always want to do is you want to carb load.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So when I was doing the Ironman training in 2019, it was all about carb loading. But that becomes very challenging. So talk to the audience a little bit about the misnomers between what proper carb loading is and how you can actually get sources of carbs that are good carbs versus the ones that aren't good carbs.
Yes.
Whether it be as an athlete or someone that just wants to go into your day feeling healthy and active.
Right. So I think a big thing today, back in the day, it used to be like no fats, like it's a low fat diet. And the governments were also leading into these promotions. And so everyone was, looking for low fat options. And what happened is that more sugar was put into our diet because taste has to come from somewhere. So, and today, if you compare products, even yogurt, you'll see if it says low fat, it's actually higher in sugar than if you just had a regular yogurt. So as an athlete, people are thinking that you need to have this quick, efficient energy, which is coming from sugar. And yes, it's true, but that causes a lot of spikes and quick slumps. And so for yourself, like doing more plant-based and eating more, if you're eating lean meats, you can actually get all your sources of carbs from vegetables and, complex carbs like sweet potato. And you don't have to be afraid of carbs, though. A lot of people today are on this like low carb everything, keto diet. Keto is fine. And you can get a lot of energy, like I said, from fats, but you don't have to be afraid of the natural carbs that are coming from plants and some of the non-refined grains.
On Waves of Success, we always talk about how people caught their wave. How did you catch your wave? How did you get to be where you are? And I'm sure it was a journey.
Yes, yeah.
It was probably an iteration of waves, but share with the audience how you got to where you are and some of the lessons you learned along the way.
Sure. So it's interesting because there's this book that I've been reading, and it's called The Equation of Happiness. And it talks about, sometimes people kind of get lost and, you feel kind of bumpy along the way, and are things like good enough, and you get to a certain point in your life, and what goals are you trying to accomplish? And for myself, it felt like that for a long time. I felt like I just didn't find my way. And I was doing all these different things. But now looking back, I realized things were always kind of funneling in the right direction. I was picking up skills along the way to do what I'm doing today. And I never ever imagined I was going to be a chef. So I kind of started back in the health and food industry, working in fitness clubs, when I was younger. But
In what capacity? As a trainer?
No, in sales. I was working as a membership salesperson, but I really loved inspiring people. And so I was writing, at the time it was just emails. We didn't have blogs and stuff like that, but emails to inspire people to come in and work out. And I really enjoyed that, but I never saw that as like a long-term career. But then through my own journey, like just learning nutrition and trying to lose weight, and I had some of my own health issues because of that. It was a real struggle to kind of be a foodie and enjoy food and want to have a social life, but then also to lose weight. And so I really had to teach myself nutrition. And then it was only until I learned about sort of the politics behind food and food labeling and what to look out for in ingredients, and how to really just eat whole foods. Don't eat things from packages that really helped and changed my life and my health. So I worked in food, like politics. So I was a food policy analyst in the UK. And I kind of worked more on like inspiring people to have better health outcomes through policy. So nutrition labeling, helping kids school food transition. And I worked on a campaign that worked with Jamie Oliver, who is a popular chef, and he really revolutionized children's food especially, but also just food in general, and making people aware that you can still eat delicious gourmet food, but it can be healthy and organic. And so I went and I got a master's degree in food and nutrition policy, and really explored more about that. And when I moved to Florida, there wasn't really those jobs here. And I went back to kind of my grassroots as a nutritionist and worked one-on-one with people. But the more I was working one-on-one with people, the biggest struggle was actually making the meals. So I could give the meal plans till I was blue in the face, but they weren't actually prepping the food. So then they were asking me to work for them and cook for them. And that eventually evolved from, a meal prep business to private chef. And now I do a lot of catering and picnics and yachting and that sort of thing. And I just cooked at the Masters a couple weeks ago too. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and it just keeps going and evolving, which is the name of my business. And I love it. I love the whole journey.
Well, it's interesting. Every time we have somebody that's on the show and we talk about some of their history and how they caught their wave, it's fascinating if you think about physics. And you use the analogy of surfing, which obviously I'm an avid surfer.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the wave can actually build up momentum.
Yes.
And it's very similar in business. So it's obviously happening with you.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Evolve Health. What is that? And how do people learn more about what you're doing? And how do you help people?
Thank you. So Evolve Health is just the name of my overall business. And originally, like I said, it kind of started more as a blog back in the day, and then as my nutrition business. So if you go to my website, it's evolvehealthcoaching.com, and on there you can get free meal plans every month if you subscribe to the blog. And I post blogs about different recipes and healthy tips and tricks in the kitchen. But I also have different programs that people can follow. So if you want like a 10-day cleanse, whether you're looking to lose 10 pounds in 10 days, or you want a good kickstart to healthy eating, or maybe you have a thyroid issue and you need to balance hormones, things like that. So that program's great. I also do an 8-week meal prep course. So I'm teaching people how to meal prep and giving them the plan, which again is one of the most important things to do, is to plan your meals. And then I do a lot of catering and private chef work and meal prepping.
So I found it interesting with a lot of the guests that are on the show, there's two driving forces usually to their success. One is purpose and the other is passion.
Yes.
And you just touched upon both of those. Now, here's something that's interesting that I'd love to pick your mind on, are habits. We had talked offline about one of my favorite books, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in that book, he talks about how important it is to have micro habits. The reason I bring that up is because I think a lot of people that are struggling with trying to have healthy meal plans feel that it's too expensive, it's too timely. So can you talk a little bit about those misnomers as to how people can, within a reasonable budget, put together a really good meal plan and not have it take up the entire morning prepping it?
Absolutely. So we'll use your surfing theme as a good analogy. Any new thing can be scary. It's the unknown, and it's a skill that needs to be learned, and, I wouldn't just go grab a surfboard and go hit some massive waves, without maybe having some lessons, a strategy, a plan to pick up these skills. So just like anything in life that you want to change or head in a different direction, you need to take those strategies and baby steps to be successful. So when it comes to meal prepping and meal planning, there's a lot of different ways that you can just make those small steps. And for instance, I mean, like even if you just did one a month, that's 12 different changes in a full year. And I think people get overwhelmed by thinking that your lifestyle needs to look, like perfect.
180.
You got to suddenly be a vegan, to be healthy, but you don't really have to do that. So even, which I'll demonstrate in a few minutes, you could easily make a breakfast ahead of time in minutes for the entire week. And just eating one meal a day more healthily without a lot of sugar can change your health. And then, focus on lunch the next month, focus on a couple dinners. But building those habits, it just takes practice. And that's really what it is. We have these routines that are built into us since we were kids, whether you've been taught to eat a certain way or just how you're managing your time. But if you start making these changes and you put it into practice, it becomes your new norm. And it'll just become just easy. And then so cooking yourself your own meals will be, you'll look back and wonder how you didn't make overnight oats before,
right?
So.
And I'm glad you talked about that because that's one of my two favorite meals that I've now learned because I was that person. I was the one that said, I don't have time.
Yes.
And it's going to cost too much money and I'm not going to be able to prep it. But two of the things that I love to make that I'll do the night before is I'll do overnight chia.
Yes.
So I'll put chia in a bowl, right, with some almond milk. And all of a sudden I wake up in the morning, I have a perfect breakfast and I do the overnight oats too.
Yeah.
So talking about habits, right? And I think you bring something up really interesting. We could probably do an entirely second episode on the psychology of the food industry.
Yes.
I'd like for you to touch upon it a little bit and then educate the audience as to some of the things that people have to be aware of in terms of red flags. This is something that I've learned now that I have Candida as to the sugars and some of the yellow number 5 and reds and so talk just briefly about some of the things that if I was to walk into any local supermarket and I wanted to change my eating habits and I wanted to start, because that's what you and I also talked about, you have to start.
You
got to start.
Yep.
And what would you do?
First of all, like I said, have a plan. So know the things that you want to what you are going to commit to cook that week or prepare that week. And then when you go grocery shopping, you want to have a list and shop the parameters. So you're eating more fresh foods than actually, packaged and processed foods and not fast food, obviously. But when you are buying packaged foods, I think people get very confused because there's so many different mixed messages about what is healthy, what's not. There's actually no definition in food labeling for healthy, so it gets abused quite often. So the number one thing I would say is learn to read a nutrition label. There are so many different ingredients that we can't pronounce, and you don't need to know what all of them are, but if you can't pronounce a handful of the ingredients that are in the dish, it's what we call a Franken food. It is a lab-made meal, and it's not good for you. Your body's not going to recognize it as what it needs, and that's where cravings come from. You start craving more nutrients, and then people overeat. So if you learn how to look at a food label and at least, the very least, look at how many ingredients are in it, do you recognize a lot of things? Is there a lot of sugar? And there's a lot of names for sugar out there, which Google, there's 52 names for sugar. So it's made to confuse you and try and hide the sugars. But look for, you have to have added sugar. So if something has like dates in it, that's a natural sugar, okay? And so it's gonna just have high amounts of sugar. That's not necessarily bad for you. But the added sugar will be all the refined sugars they're putting into it. So you wanna keep that to a minimum. And
what are the ones to stay away from? The big ones, obviously.
The sugar.
High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
And then what are the ones conversely that you want to look for?
Yeah.
That are healthy? Cane sugar? Is cane sugar, or can that be
So
misleading too?
Yes.
Right?
This is what I'm talking about. So all 52 names for sugar is just sugar. Sugar is sugar is sugar. Especially when you have a health issue, you're trying to lose weight. Even if it's fructose or it's coming from dates. Sugar is sugar if you're a diabetic.
Is there a healthier sugar?
There is monk fruit sweetener, so I will show you that as well. And a lot of products are not necessarily using it unless it's like the monk fruit sweetener companies, and there's a couple of those, and I'll show you one of the packages. But that stevia is a good one as well, but monk fruit is my favorite. It's healthy, so it does not stimulate your body and insulin like regular sugar.
That's what I use, so I'm glad that you give me the green light on that somewhat.
Yes, stevia is good, however, it has a funny aftertaste. I would put monk fruit sweetener.
You would.
It tastes better.
And it comes granular?
Yeah.
Formed just like sugar?
Just like
I
sugar.
know you'll demonstrate in a little bit. But
yeah, and you can get brown monk fruit sweetener as well, which is really nice. And so I, when I do baking, you can do brownies, you can do all sorts of, baked goods, and it bakes just the same as regular sugar, which is nice. And it doesn't give this funny aftertaste, which stevia in baking doesn't work quite so well. So
I've tried that.
Yeah.
So go back to the plan.
Yeah.
Plan the work.
Yes.
Work the plan.
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
so if we want to start small, because I think you have to start,
Yeah.
we agree on that.
Yeah.
But obviously we don't want to get overwhelmed
Yes.
because it can be a little daunting.
Yes.
So just start, put together a meal plan.
Just-
so if I was to start
yes.
tomorrow, would you recommend that I start with a weekly meal plan, a daily?
No. You know what?
A month? Where do I start?
Weekly, of course, would be good, but I still think that's overwhelming if you don't already cook. So, I mean, if you were someone who you cook your dinners every day, or you plan ahead a little bit and you feel comfortable with that, then yes, it's realistic to do a full week. But for someone who's like, no, I order most of my food out and maybe I put together a frozen meal, that's going to be really overwhelming. So I would say start with breakfasts or pick a couple of lunches, and find some recipes that look delicious to you. Maybe even picking, if you eat a lot of fast food or prepared foods, pick that meal, even if it was a hamburger. Learn how to make it more healthy. So, even just a better quality meat or a leaner meat, maybe do half the bun so it's not full carbs, cut the cheese if you're looking to have less fat, but put veggies on it. Always, always, always. Actually, this is another great way to start with clients that I've worked with who are really starting from zero and they know nothing about nutrition. It's add in 1 cup of greens at every mealtime. So I don't care if you're having your sugary cereal for the morning, but you have to find a way to eat a cup of greens as well on the side and maybe do that first. So that helps them lean towards omelets because it's easier to put the greens in and still taste
Right, and that
good.
could be broccoli or spinach
Exactly.
in your omelet.
Exactly.
Correct.
So it just starts influencing your choices. And then again, you want to go out for McDonald's, no problem, but you need to have a cup of greens. So then they start just looking at the menu differently and seeing what the other options are. And just that rule alone, we'll see a lot of calories saved, more fiber taken in, less cravings because you're getting more nutrients, and you're filling your stomach up with these greens instead of picking up French fries or something. So
Excellent.
yeah.
What motivates you?
Well, I love having purpose. So you mentioned, having purpose and passion, and I'm really thankful to have found this career and that it kind of led this way because I am a foodie. I love food, and I was always passionate about nutrition. And again, for my own sake, my own health sake at first. But now it's nice being able to share that with people one-on-one. So when I worked in the policy realm, you're talking to a population. You're trying to shift and nudge governments to do things, and it's it's like talking to a wall most of the time. So when I get to work one-on-one with someone, and the light bulbs go on, and they lose that weight, they feel more confident, or I serve someone a meal, and I mean it's a little narcissistic, but every mealtime I'm serving my clients, and they're like, "This is the best thing ever." That is motivation for me. I love it, and I love just showing my love through food.
Well, and it can also be invigorating to make a difference.
Yeah.
Can it?
Yes.
I mean, I work for the Palm Beach Symphony.
Yeah.
And we've donated 85 instruments this year to kids that otherwise wouldn't have instruments. And there's something that's really gratifying.
It
and
is.
it's the same with you.
Yeah.
When you sit there and serve a meal to a client,
Yeah.
and you're seeing that you're making a difference in their life,
Yeah.
especially from a health standpoint,
Exactly.
that can be really motivating.
Well, and it's nice because the clients that I cook full time for, they're eating my healthy meals, and I cook very anti-inflammatory foods, so low sugar, and lots of veggies, but it's still gourmet. It's still really delicious. And even after a week of me cooking, all sorts of clients will always say that they feel better, they're sleeping better, their back pain or knee pain has gone. So all those sort of things just make you feel really good and make me want to keep going and keep doing better and reaching more people. That's kind of my motivation.
To make more of a difference.
Yeah, to make more of a difference.
Let's speak about oils. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
A very good friend of mine is Dr. Fuchs, who's a podiatrist in Jupiter, and we're always having these conversations about nutrition. She believes in nutrition, in addition to being a great podiatrist.
Okay.
And she was saying that oils are really dangerous because of inflammation.
Yes,
right? With the
yes.
joints and everything else. So just touch a little bit upon oils.
Sure.
Is there a good oil, a bad oil? How do you stay away from oils? I mean, I think we live in a day and age right now because everything is so fast-paced and
Yeah.
processed that everything is deep fried or processed
Right.
with oil. So
Well-
what are your suggestions for people out there that are listening and watching as to how they can navigate that labyrinth with the oil
Oh
world.
man, okay. So that is a big one to dive into, and I think that's where people are going to get super overwhelmed. I don't like to focus on cutting all oils out, or saying that certain oils are better than others necessarily. I mean, obviously, vegetable oil, canola oil, not good. But there is a big debate about even olive oil and all oils, they're so processed, and so they're inflammatory. Because now you're cutting out sugar and oil and all these things. So it becomes very noisy, telling clients that. So my main thing is keep the sugars low, but use things like coconut oil. Grapeseed oil is the number one that I cook with because it has a high heat point. It has a lot of nutritional compounds to it, and it doesn't have like a strong flavor. So I can make a lot of dressings or like shallow fry fish. And it's a lot healthier than using alternatives. But coconut oil and grapeseed oil, olive oil I'll use like as a flavor. So to put, I was going to show a dish that I was going to put that on, and again, just for flavor.
I think one of the challenges with coconut oil is that it doesn't have very good viscosity.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah,
right.
But also the flavor is strong. So it's like unless you're making like an Asian dish, you don't really want to have that flavor either. So I use that sparingly, but mostly in baking.
How do you manage work-life balance? Because I know it's a challenge for me. Here I am leading the Palm Beach Symphony and sitting on a couple of different boards and raising 3 beautiful children becomes a challenge. How do you manage your work-life balance as you're scaling Evolve?
Well, because it's a passion, it doesn't always feel like work, but I do end up working long days, long hours. But I am very active. I like to work out. I have 3 dogs, so that's a lot of work too. And so it gives me a little reprieve from that. But then it helps me with my energy. But I also spend a lot of time outdoors. So I'm an avid diver. I like to be on the boats, on the water, under the water, and anything really that's getting me some fresh air and some sun. But I still actually do love cooking, which people ask me all the time. Maybe not at the end of the day after cooking, for everyone. But like this evening, I'm going to some friends' houses and we're going to cook vegan tonight. So I still am living the passion. So that's, a hobby for me.
I'm glad you brought that up because I mentioned this on one of my previous episodes that Oprah said many, many years ago, if you find your passion, find a way to get paid for your passion. You never work another day in your life.
Right.
And I love what you just said because I think sometimes if people truly love what they're doing, then it's not really work.
No.
Right? You enjoy it.
Yeah. Like, you have, like, it's not that I can go sunbathing. I know that I have to execute some tasks that day. But it's not a dread. I'm like, oh, got to go to the office today. I really love what I'm doing. And when you get into it and your clients are happy, I love it. And it inspires me to do more projects, like I always am coming up with something creative or doing this or just trying to find a new way to inspire people to get in the kitchen. And I love it. I really do.
I also appreciate you bringing up getting outside. Talking about atomic habits and these micro habits of things that we can do, going back to the inverse of what you talked about, that we all are conditioned, right? We all grew up, we had our certain meals that we ate when we grew up, and that was because of tradition. Mom made it this way. We can change those habits.
100%.
You can shift those habits and you can
Anytime.
break the conditional programming. And that even includes if you do have an office job, and maybe it isn't your passion, you can get out of the office and walk around the building, get some fresh air, take a walk on the beach, if you live in an area that has a beach or a lake or whatever it might be. But I think that's really sound advice too. And for all of us, just even if it's 20 minutes a day.
Exactly.
It's therapeutic.
On your lunch,
right.
go outside, eat your lunch outside, go look at some water. When I'm like trying to help change mindsets of clients around food and get them more active, it's really important for people to go outside, take a walk. A lot of the time our overeating and those afternoon slumps and cravings, when you're heading to the vending machine, generally comes from boredom because your diet is probably full of sugar and you started your morning either with a bowl of cereal with sugar or you didn't eat and now you're hungry. So to help people to get by those cravings, I always tell people, go for a walk, go outside. You won't have that message shooting at you anymore that you need to go to the vending machine, and it helps relieve stress. So I love being outside and being in nature.
I also think we have to look at our bodies like vehicles, don't we?
Yes.
It's almost like a professional race car.
Exactly.
The oil and the gas that you put into that
Yep.
car is going to determine the efficiency of that car, and our bodies are no different.
Exactly.
You really have to be careful with what
Yeah.
you put into it, and then of course it will perform based on what you're putting into it.
Exactly. I always say, like, you can't buy a new body on like eBay or Amazon or whatever, we're buying it from these days. You have this one body to live in, and how do you want that vehicle to be carrying you around? People that don't pay attention to their diet and have a high sugar diet. When you're younger, it's easier to burn, or athletes to keep the weight off, and you look great. But you're not doing yourself any service. Your hormones, hormone balancing, and gut health, and a lot of the time, even professional athletes that call me later in life, they're now into their 50s, now have a slew of health problems. And those habits are so ingrained because they didn't make those changes, that it makes it even more difficult when you're older. So you really have to think about, what do you want old age to look like? Like, do you want to not be able to be active, or do you want to be able to still go hiking with your grandkids? So I want people to kind of take a step back from their life and realize, life is basic. It's a canvas. You get to paint your journey. And at any point in that canvas, you can change what the rest of the picture looks like. So you need to make that choice and kind of realize that, unfortunately, in this country especially, it is up to you to defend your health, and you have to be informed. So hopefully, your viewers that are listening to this, this will inspire you to kind of take those first steps and make.
Well, I
make a change.
appreciate what you're doing, because a lot of it is education, right?
Yes.
It's educating. It's you as a voice educating,
Yeah.
us using a platform like we're using today to educate, but then also the consumer being interested in learning more
Yes.
and consuming good information about how they can eat better.
Exactly.
Right? So that's very fascinating.
And not be overwhelmed by it, because there is a lot of information out there, and I think that's what people get paralyzed with. There's just so much. But I think just the big takeaway for someone who's thinking about making changes is just start small. Don't think of yourself as a failure because you didn't, follow that particular diet for 30 days straight, but just keep going and keep paying attention, and arming yourself with those tools to understand nutrition and food properly.
Well, they're micro habits.
Yeah,
Have
exactly.
you ever read the book Make Your Bed?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
premise of the book, it was a Navy, I'm not sure
So
what his
I've
title
heard
was,
of
but
it.
he was in the Navy for many, many years, Admiral. And he did this speech, I think at the University of Texas, that has millions and millions of views.
Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking to the graduating class, and he basically just said, make your bed.
Yeah.
Because if you wake up in the morning and you make your bed, that's going to put you in the right
Yeah. Discipline.
momentum of doing some other micro habits. So it's very similar. And I wanted to mention that because I do think that people can get overwhelmed in the world of food
Yes.
and dieting and a million different diets. We're being inundated with messaging from 82 different
Yes.
angles. So
Yes.
just start small,
Yes.
right? And make some micro habits. Maybe it's that overnight oats in the morning.
Exactly.
Maybe it's packing a lunch, getting outside. Those are all things that we can easily do.
Yeah.
Very, very manageable.
And don't be like, a lot of people think that there's just one magic diet out there. And that's why, the new one that gets in the media every year is so popular, because people shift to that hoping that that's going to be this, silver bullet. But there really isn't a one best diet. It's really, it depends on your body, what works for you and your lifestyle. I mean, that's huge. You can't just shift a lifestyle. You've had these ingrained habits for a lifetime. And to break those habits, it takes time to detangle. And so if you see something you think is going to fit for your lifestyle, go in that direction. But the basis of all of them is eat more whole foods and whole grains, stay away from all the refined sugars, don't go for the diet products because it's all fake food, and just try and make the best choices you can. Everything has to be in moderation. I enjoy wine, and I'm a foodie, so I kind of go by that like 80-20 rule. Like 80% of my week
Hopefully isn't wine.
is I would like it to be, but no, I would not be able to make my bed if I did 80% wine. But if you do 80% healthy, and you make as best choices as you can. If I go out to eat, which I love to go to restaurants, I know that I can't always order the pasta, but maybe once every other week, I'll get pasta, but I will usually order a white fish with a side of greens and some sort of complex carb.
I appreciate you saying that too, because I think we put guilt on ourselves, don't we? We're so hard on
Yes,
ourselves
totally.
that we think everything has to be perfect. And it
Yes.
doesn't have to be perfect. We can cheat
Yes.
every now and then, right? As long
Yes.
as it's balanced.
Yes. Well, and again, this depends on what your health outcome or goal is. So, if you're diabetic, you have to make certain decisions, which is no more sugar, and that's unfortunate, but if people's health is predisposed and you had a bad diet necessarily leading up to that. But as a healthy person just trying to change your habits, yes, don't beat yourself up. And again, when we fail at something, this is generally why diets don't work. Fad diets don't work because you set yourself up for failure. You're basically saying, I'm going to change my whole lifestyle for 30 days or 3 months or 6 months or whatever that is. And that's not realistic. You're not working on changing the mindset. You're not learning a new skill like cooking some meals. And instead you've given yourself a start and an end date. And then you fail 2 weeks later because it's not realistic. And then you look for the next one and then you fail at that. So a lot of people go into these fad diets already knowing that they're going to fail. And that is what snowballs, and then you end up eating more anyway.
You're doomed right from the beginning.
You're doomed right from the beginning. So,
and I think instead of having moderation, going into it with moderation
Yeah.
in mind, and then also managing expectations,
Yeah.
two things that I think are really important both personally and professionally,
100%.
is moderation and
yeah,
managing expectations.
Exactly.
I love the fact that you talked about you can define what you look like when you get
Yeah.
later in life.
Yeah.
I do triathlons, as you know. And there's this thing within the triathlon world that the triathletes have to put their age on the back of their calf. So many of the races that I've raced in, I'll look as somebody's running past me at their
so
calf. And some of them, I hate to say, are 75, 76,
Wow.
77 that
Yeah.
are lapping me.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, hey, get back here.
Yeah.
Right? But it's to your point that we really can. It's a blank canvas.
Yes.
We can determine our health
Yes.
for the rest of our lives with some small adjustments.
Yes. And in business as well. So, just to parallel the two, if you're not happy in your career and there's stress in your life and you want to go a different direction, you can educate yourself and go in that direction. I think I'm proof of that. My background is so varied. And then I just, struggling here to find the job I thought I wanted. I just one day was like, I need to do something, and this is where I'm going to go. And I put my efforts, and I'm passionate about it, and I changed my entire life, and I'm super happy.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's touch upon that a little bit because
Sure.
I find it very fascinating. You were a flight attendant for 4 years?
Yes,
Right? So
yes.
talk about that.
Sure.
Because I also think that a lot of the people that I have on this show have experienced that exact same thing.
Yeah.
That I always say it's not an elevator, it's a staircase.
Yeah.
You don't just go up to the ninth floor in
No.
anything that you want to do.
Yes.
There are iterations. So talk a little bit about how
Yeah.
you went through different doors, because I think that is such a great lesson, Jennifer,
Yeah.
for people that listen to this show, that you might be in a certain time in your life right
Yes.
now, and maybe things aren't going the way that you want, but continue to move forward and
Yes.
continue to persevere, because the door that's around the corner may be
Right.
the door that opens. So talk a little
Okay.
bit about how you pivoted, because I think that's so incredible.
So it's funny because at the time, especially being, I don't know, at the time, like probably in my late 20s, early 30s, I just felt like I was flaring around and like, I'm doing this and then I'm doing this and then I'm doing this. And I was like, why couldn't I just be someone who wanted to have this job, and I trained and I got that job and this is what I've been doing for 20 years. And I thought that was a bad thing. Now looking back, like I said, my journey, actually, I picked up skills that really helped me in the industry that I'm in today, like even flight attending. I worked in first class and having to deal with the people that I was working with, and food and beverage, and just, being timely and being just available, like flying here and there, my hours. And it really actually relates a lot to what I do today. So it's funny because I just thought, what am I doing with my life? But I look at life and health like you go through different phases in your life. And sometimes it's fitting. I mean,
They're chapters in a book.
it's chapters, and you're allowed
And
to
we-
have chapters in
And
your
we
book.
have the pen.
Yeah, exactly.
to script what we
yes,
want.
Yes, not everybody else.
And if one
you know?
chapter's bad, we turn the page
Right.
and start a new chapter.
Exactly.
And there's a fresh start.
Exactly, and you can have a fresh start.
can
And
have
the
a fresh
same
start.
with your diet. Like that's why we always have like motivation Mondays, or every Monday can be your fresh start. How do you want your week to look. I mean, that's 5 days, we'll say, just for, work purposes. But that's 5 days to make a new plan. Like every week you can wake up. You could do that daily, but let's just, take that week by week. But in a life cycle, I think it's awesome. And it's really helped me to relax because I was very anxious about wanting to be at a certain point in my life by a certain time and making a certain amount of money and being focused. And while I was super ambitious and I've always been an entrepreneur, I just didn't feel like I was in the right thing yet. And it's almost like that analysis paralysis, and lots of opportunity, but you just don't pick one. And that can be very scary. You think you're never going to find it. And a lot of people also think that you have to wait for success or opportunity to come.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I have a Six Sigma certification from Purdue University, and one of the things they talk about within Six Sigma is MVP, which is minimum viable product. Okay. And this is why you have so many tech companies that launch products when they're not perfect. And the MVP methodology is launch it.
Yes.
Launch the rocket.
Just do it.
Right? It's not going to be perfect because if you sit back and wait a year or 2 years to do a strategic analysis,
you're going to be
of
lost.
The rocket being perfect, somebody else has launched the rocket.
100%.
Launch the rocket.
So
I'm glad you brought that up about just do it.
Just do it.
It's like the old Nike campaign.
That's
just
where I got.
It.
And literally, this is a funny story. So you had asked me about people that inspire me or mentors, and I have some that are obvious in the passions that I have. But one particular story was I had moved to Florida. I had just moved here, and I had renovated my house. It was originally a holiday home, so I had a white couch, and I have dogs, and so I didn't think I was moving into this house, but I ended up moving in, and obviously the couch gets dirty. So I hired a company to come and clean the couch. They ended up destroying it, and I went through this huge thing with them, and I tried to take them to court just to fix the couch, like nothing more, and they just folded their company and moved on, and I was stuck with having to get a new couch. And it was literally then that I was like, God, I've been sitting here for like 2 years trying to write this business plan and get this perfect. And I felt like I didn't know enough about a business to start it. And now I'm like, if this monkey can have a business, I can have a business. And it really showed me that you just need to do it and you'll learn along the way, Hopefully they did learn a lesson. But I know for myself, like not all my products that come out are perfect. Like sometimes when I'm writing a new program, I want everything to be edited perfect in pictures, and I'm just like, you know what, just get it up there. And you learn, someone will say, hey, there's a spelling mistake here, or hey, this link is broken. Great, you fix it, the next client comes, they didn't even notice. So that's a huge lesson that I learned, and I'm so thankful, just get going and do something. And same within your diet, we've just been saying this, just do something different. What you're doing right now isn't working, and that's like the definition of insanity. Stop doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, and paradigm plays a big part too. Have you read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yes,
by Stephen Covey?
Yes.
Do you remember the picture that's in the book?
No.
It's one picture, but it's 2 pictures within the picture.
Oh, yes.
One is this beautiful 18-year-old young lady, and the other is this 80-year-old woman.
Yep.
And it goes to the point about you saying with Monday Motivations and just kickstarting your week and having a paradigm of opportunity and possibility and motivation.
Yep.
So I think that's really important.
Yep, 100%.
What's next for Jennifer Parker and Evolve?
Well, I've got these superfood bombs that I've been making, and people are picking up interest in that. I'm always on to something new, but I do have a recipe book, the cookbook that's going to be coming out, and my cooking show. So lots of stuff. I'm moving to Chicago for the off season here in Florida. So I'll be there in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be working in the Hamptons in a couple of weeks. So lots of exciting stuff on the go, and I'm always taking up new opportunities and to help reach more people. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks
We'll
for having
post all the information about today's show on our website.
Great.
And we'll put some recipes and even the 10-day challenge. I know that people will be very interested in how they can lose 10 pounds in 10 days. I'm sure a lot of people will be intrigued by that.
Everyone wants that. When season starts back up, everyone wants to defluff.
So true. Thank you for being on Waves of Success.
Thanks for having me.
Truly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Waves of Success with our special guest, nutritional chef Jennifer Parker. Make sure that you subscribe and follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, and Apple Music. And until next time, catch your wave.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Waves of Success, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IYC Yachts, Chervaux, and Square Grouper, and the production team at Indie House Films.